presidential pardon is not absolute. In order to maintain a system of checks and balances, we cannot just throw up our hands in defeat and say that it is absolute. It needs to be regulated somehow. Because then what is to prevent the president from abusing this pardon power? There must be some sort of limits in place. In the case where Trump pardoned the sheriff, that could have landed in prison for 6 months for his case, sends out a dangerous message. What if all white federal officials were to go out and do whatever they wanted, thinking that perhaps they would receive a presidential pardon? This sends out almost like a green light to discrimination, because the sheriff, despite his discriminatory behavior and despite his violation of a constitutional amendment, he was pardoned. The system of checks and balances was originally set up to prevent a tyranny from forming. If the executive branch is given this power to basically directly oppose the judicial branch without anyone or anything getting in the way or preventing it, what would stop further corruption? In terms of who gets to decide the limits, it should be the courts who gets to decide that. The courts should have the power to refuse the president's pardon. For example, if in a certain case they find that the pardon is unconstitutional, they should be able to refuse that pardon. Kind of similarly to that principle of judicial review. And also, it should take a certain amount of votes, similar to the system in Congress, where if Congress is trying to override a presidential veto, you must have a 2/3 majority vote in both houses, in both the House and the Senate. So I think there should also be a similar system like that in place for essentially overriding the presidential pardon, excuse me. So there should also be that system to essentially cancel the presidential pardon. Thank you. This has been Christine LeMay about the presidential pardon.